and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, good morning and welcome everybody to the September 5th Board of Commissioners meeting. Roll call please.
Rhodes.
Present.
Fair.
Here.
Ziegler.
Yes.
Sykes.
Yes.
Obermeyer.
Yes, here. Open meetings law is posted on the south side of our chambers. It is in the hallway outside of our chambers, actually on our website too. Proof of publication was in the News Times August 31st. It was also on our website. Next up, we need to review and approve the minutes of our August 22nd Board of Commissioner meeting.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Sykes.
Yes.
Ziegler.
Yes.
Fair.
Yes.
Rhodes.
Yes.
Obermeyer.
Yes, and to adopt today's agenda.
Move to adopt.
Thank you, Daniel.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Rhodes.
Yes.
Fair.
Yes.
Ziegler.
Yes.
Sykes.
Yes.
And Obermeyer.
Yes. Okay, officials forum. Jump right up there.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Harv.
The bridges on Road 20 are done. They're seeded. All we have to do is put fence back in sometime. You'll have one more payout coming probably on the next meeting, I'm guessing. Other than that, we're trying to finish up what Mother Nature washed out earlier. Then we'll go on to another minor project and then on to Road 8. So next week or two, probably show up on Road 8 over by Henderson and start working over in there. So, other than that, we just do what we always do, all gravel, laid roads. So,
Is Road 8 like clean ditches, the normal type reconstruction?
yes, yes it is.
Okay. Any questions? Thanks, Harv.
Very
Yeah,
good.
have a
Thank
good
you.
one.
Any, Kurt?
Morning.
Morning.
Kurt Goldred, York County Assessor. Just wanted to update you all on the postcard status, I guess you want to call it that, for the tax request hearing. There's two entities that have to participate in the hearing this year, York County and Southeast Community College. Two entities for our jurisdiction. The hearing for Southeast Community College will take place in Lincoln at the County City building down there. I can't remember the date off the top of my head. And then our hearing here in York County will take place on September 18th at 6:01 in the lower level conference room of the courthouse here. So we're in the process this morning of getting that information to our camera system vendor, and they'll send that information on then to the print shop, and cards will be sent out. So in case you guys start getting calls from people, just want to let you know what that's about. So
19th, you said, or 18th?
the 18th, September 18th.
Thank you.
Thanks,
That's
Kurt.
all I got. You bet.
Ran out of officials. There's just one left. Gary, you're not here.
I'm here.
Okay. Do you have anything?
Not really. It was
Okay.
good questions for me.
No? No? Okay, public. At this time, public can step forward and have some comments if they would like to for a couple minutes. Morning, Willard.
Morning. Willard Peterson, 514 Road 13, York, Nebraska. Asked the Postal Service why my address isn't from Bradshaw, because it ought to be. I really don't know how to say this. It has to do with my opinion, the wheels falling off of this meeting after I had to leave it early 2 weeks ago. Has to do with all the axes you guys had. And I guess my general comment is the fact that I understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to hold costs down. You're also having to think about some entities that technically you shouldn't have to, but it's legislative mandates that you have to watch out for certain people's monies. And I thought for a while it would be easier to work with you guys with that than the legislature. Okay, we'll just go with that. The more I've thought about it, I understand you're trying to hold things down and you're trying to save a few pennies here and a few pennies there, but the more I've thought about it, I can only see in the future that what maybe you saving a few pennies now is gonna end up costing a whole lot more than a few pennies here and a few pennies there. It's gonna end up costing a whole lot more because the world is not gonna stop, economics is not gonna stop. So maybe, in my opinion, maybe a mindset needs to be changed a little bit and think, you can't outgas everything, but at least if you're a little more prepared, then it won't hurt so bad in the future, because it will.
Thank you, Wode. Anybody else at this time? Seeing nobody come forward, my understanding is there is no need for an executive session. There is no general assistance cases, so we're on to payroll and vendor claims. Anybody see anything?
I was curious about the Axon Enterprises bill in the drug and law enforcement category, and check with Mary that's laser, tasers and training, certifications and training with that.
Move to approve payroll and vendor claim.
Thank you, Daniel.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Brooks.
Yes.
Sykes.
Yes.
Ziegler.
Yes.
Baird.
Yes.
And Overmark.
Yes, there is no funding transfers. Mr. Cannon is running a few minutes late, so we'll get to him when he does get here. Next up is discuss and act on York County 911 reciprocal training agreement. As I was going through there, guys, last night, I noticed that wasn't on an attachment. I did email them to everybody. So if you have an opportunity to open up the email, or if you've had an opportunity to see it, Leila is here to speak about it this morning, so go ahead, Leila.
Good morning, Commissioners. Leila Love, York County 911. I wanted to bring this forward after we had one of our last trainees leave about 3 weeks prior to graduating training. Our training program is about 6 months long for a valid reason of making sure that they're absolutely ready to take on the position, that they've had all the required training that they need to do it. So she actually left to go to another 911 agency. So to see that agency took on that employee that was fully trained, ready to go at their agency, it just made me bring up this idea of having a training payment agreement where they have to stay with us for so long or they have to pay back that training. So when I calculated it all up, including the CTO differential payment and the amount of training that they go through, it would equal about $2,000, which I thought if they were here at least 6 months after 6 months of training, equaling their 1 year probationary period, that $2,000 I think is worth that 6 months of employment at least. And it would give our trainers an opportunity to breathe and to take a break from training. We have been training consistently, trying to keep staff on location now for the last 4 years. We just can't keep people in. So I'm hoping that this could bring at least a little bit of longevity in the comm center and allow our CTOs to get a break if that person wanted to leave. This agreement I didn't develop on my own. I actually reached out on a 911 forum and talked to other leaders around the country on what they were doing. There's a lot of, excuse me, there's a lot of 911 centers that have implemented this type of agreement. You're just gonna see Nebraska, now that they put out the baseline training standards, you're gonna see a lot of lateral transfers from agencies now that that's been implemented. It's gonna be kind of like law enforcement. We have to look at their background. Do they have the right kind of training? What do we have to give them? So you're gonna see that. moving forward, I think.
It looked like you had Zell look at this,
Yes.
and then you had county attorney's office also look at it. The only thing that, as I read through it, I think it's fine agreement. Do we need to spell out in there what that is? You know,
What the cost is.
right, or somehow they know what that is, or at least the agreement spells it out.
Up to you. I would just say if our training was to increase or decrease over the years, that cost, we would have to modify this agreement and you guys would have to vote on it again. Is that correct?
Right, unless we said, I mean, is it, we're good enough, shall the employee leave this department in good standing or be terminated? First 18 months of employment, those costs incurred in both training and attendance there too. That, you feel that's good enough?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think that allows us just to stay consistent amongst all of them, to say that we were holding them all to the same standard. It just might be that training costs might be different today than it would be 2 years from now, if we were to take on more training costs or
So
lessen it.
the agreement could stay the same, and Gary, I guess I'll throw a question at you. Do you think that we should have like an amendment or appendix to this that says, you know, at this current time, it is valued at this, so they know, so it's in writing? Versus, I mean, if we go back and say, hey, you owe us 2,000, they said, well, you never told me that. Yes, I did. No, you know, we get into that. Do you think?
My gut tells me that there should be an addendum in there that would indicate what the amount would be specifically. Obviously, that's going to change from individual to individual, but I agree from the standpoint that there would be no second guessing as far as what the agreement was.
And then if we did, if you felt like it should be $2,500, then we wouldn't have to take up the whole thing, just
Right.
being just that
Just
piece
make
of
it
it.
as an attachment to
I
this.
think so. I mean, what's everybody else think?
I think that'd be good. Then, I mean, that just gives the individual and awareness of if they should decide to leave, what they have coming to them.
Okay.
Rather than after the fact, even if they know that there's something coming, this gives them a better idea of what that would be. I think that would be smart. The only other question I had, you said something about 6 months and 6 months. This has in here 18 months.
It
I
does.
might have given a older copy. My intention was to do 12
12
months. Yeah,
Okay.
because the idea was, I wanted it to meet the probationary period essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So in that second to last paragraph, that you want that to read 12?
12 months, please. Yep, I see it now, thank you.
And then, currently, you're thinking those incurred costs for training would be right at the addendum to it would be right at $2,000.
Yep, that would include we pay the CTOs a differential while they're in training. So it would include that, and it would include all of the training materials that they have to go through and get certified on.
Now, I don't know, I mean, unless we need to, I would say that Leela would be able to set that training cost. Like, I don't know that we need to, for
Basic, their CPR, they have to take an EMD course. I could just list all that out and what the
That'd be
cost
good.
would be.
So they have that
So they would
information in
have
front
it.
of them.
And it goes into their personnel record at that time.
Sure.
Leela had got this obviously to me, and I felt like it's something that we needed to adapt, seeing as how we're talking about our employees here. And then I'm also wondering too, if this isn't something that I know the handbook needs to be gone over again, just, you know, normal things, and at that point in time, we don't adopt this into our handbook also under them, call center that is, so. But for right now, I think she has somebody in,
A conditional offer right now.
and for us to approve this now would be a good thing. That way that offer can be made and that paperwork. And I would say if we're gonna do that, you know, make the changes known what they are,
Yep.
you know, that we want. Anything else?
Seems to me it's a good idea. I don't think any of us are fully aware of what it costs to develop somebody's skills, whether it's commissioners going to training with NACO or a conference or what you were talking about, the 911 training. There's an expense, and people should be aware of that. We take it for granted, oh, I'm just going to work today. No, it's more than that. There's an investment in it.
Yep, and I mean, likewise with the, as far as I know, we don't have anything currently in place like this, but with the county, with the roads department, you know, if we hire somebody in without a CDL, we have to send them now, it's not just go take a test, you gotta go through all this training before you can take the test. And so, yeah, you're right, there's a lot of cost that is incurred in employment. Yeah, I think that we should go ahead and adopt it. I would make a motion that we adopt the, what do we call it? 911 reciprocal training agreement, for a, covering the first 12 months of employment and including an addendum spelling out the training costs.
Thank you, Daniel.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
And maybe the word shouldn't be cost, but investment.
There you go, I like that.
Replace the investment costs.
Roll call.
Rhodes.
Yes.
Sykes.
Yes.
Ziegler.
Yes.
Bear.
Yes.
And Overmark.
Yes.
Thank you.
Before you get out of here, it looks like we dodged a bullet this weekend.
We did, yes. So I ended up finding out after I had talked to you that the central office actually had a structure fire on Friday and it damaged their generator. So their equipment had been only running off of UPS services. And then we were just finding out their new generator wasn't gonna show up until 9 PM on Saturday, and then they had a 2-hour install period. My concern is I feel that Windstream could have reached out to us Friday after they had gotten the structure fire under control to say that they're running off of battery backup. But they waited until Saturday to say, hey, you might be down in 5 minutes. So, but thankfully we did dodge that bullet. Our sister agency, Seward, their non-emergency lines were down for 24 hours, but I don't think we had any interruption in 911 services in Southeast.
It's good to hear. We can't get on that state system soon enough.
Yeah, but as you saw earlier that week too, last week, the EZNet had some problems as well, so it'll be interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We are cruising along. So we will do committee reports and wait for John. Anybody want to start?
Just met with the highway department this morning and nothing unusual going on, so. Haven't had a lot of complaints about the road, so we're happy about that.
That's always good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's always good.
Helps when it's dry.
Yeah. I didn't have 0 phone calls the last 2 weeks, so.
Must live in the right part of the county.
Oh, you had some, huh?
Woody?
Had a tech meeting with Allo, just discussing options that way, and see what comes and develops from those conversations. Probably have another follow-up with that. Also had a conference with Jack and with Nick Wallenberg, just discussing job performance.
Okay.
Well, along with what Woody said, we did have a conversation with Nick about his evaluation. Because Woody had other meetings to go to, we didn't get to complete it. But I would like to talk to Nick today to finalize that and get it turned in, if that's possible.
Okay.
Also, we had a meeting with Four Corners. We had a public meeting about the budget and about the remodel situation that's going on and who they hired. So that's all in the works right now. And it looks like everything's working out okay.
Good. Soon, right?
Yeah, it'll be done in about 2 or 3 years,
Okay.
just like every other government project.
Daniel, you got anything?
Not much to add this morning. Budget talks continue, and hopefully we can get one passed here soon, and other than that.
Well, Kurt was in and talked about,
Randy, that's the current staff.
talked about the postcard meeting, that we will be the only, well, not the only, Southeast Community College will take part in it too, but they'll take part in theirs in Lincoln. So we will have that. When we ended up being the only one, I'd asked for it to be moved back here. Just we'll do it in the lower level of the courthouse. By statute, we need to have it after 6 o'clock, so I put it at 6:01. I mean, our numbers, it turned out not bad. I mean, it depends upon how you want to spend them. You can spend them one way or you can spend them another. They are what they are. We did do some nice cuts overall. There was a $553,160 increase, and I had emailed all this information to everybody, which when you look at that growth percentage computation that we had to do, we were $347,098.76 over what we would have been to be able to avoid the postcard bill. Now, when you take the value added into, you know, the valuation that was done, our levy is just slightly increased over last year. Our levy is gonna go from 0.230689 to 0.232439. So just a very little. I did some figures, you know, on a $500,000 house, you're looking somewhere around 11 for county only, $11 more a year. So I mean, the like I say, it just depends upon how you want to spin it. I think we did a good job with the budget, but I also think we could have did better. And there'll be some people that disagree with that. The wage study that we will start with Zell, I believe at the next meeting, they're at least they're planning right now to come out. Will give us some insight on where we're at wages wise throughout the county. Some want us to believe we're behind. I do not believe that personally. So that will be a nice piece into it. And I would say, as Daniel sat through many hours with me on this, that, you know, this one was tough, and next year's, I think, you know, is going to be right there too. But I think we did as good as we can do for right now. We got some increases built in there. And, you know, unless we decide to do something different between now and then, which we only just have the one meeting by state statute, and when Mr. Cannon gets up to the mic, he could correct me if I'm wrong. By state statute, the postcard meeting that night will cover our budget hearing. We do not have to have two of them. We can have one and or the other. And so that will take place that night, and at our next meeting, we should be able to pass our budget. And the numbers in front of you are, like I say, the numbers that we have right now. So that has been a couple months of fun. Also coming in front of us is a lease that the clerk's office has looked and looked and looked, because 2 or 3 of us felt like we had seen a different lease with the Ag Society than what we could find, although we found a couple that we didn't know about, a couple 25-year ones, and the last one would have ended just last year, and the Ag Society is wanting to redo that lease. So I've had some conversations with not only them, but with Rex Hayden and with Harvey, and the city is going to take over for the Sports Authority out there and redo some soccer fields. So we want to get everything straightened up before they start on that later this fall. So we'll probably be, at the next meeting, we may have an executive session to talk about, lease agreements and stuff like that. The other thing that has come up is probation. Probation is, once again, out of room. They've added a new officer to handle the caseload, and so I will be reaching out with the Historical Society. For those of you that don't know, we have the extension office up there, and then we have the other building where probation is in the south, 3/4. Historical Society has the north part. They have nothing to do with the county other than they are in our building. We may need that room. They have faltered, I would say, a little bit. They haven't turned in a budget, to my knowledge, again this year. They didn't turn one in last year, so they're losing their taxing authority without that budget. So I'm going to try to reach out and touch base with them over the next couple weeks that I'm around. So that is most everything that I have.
From the treasurers, just an FYI for everyone to look at before they leave, if they choose to.
What is this then? Oh, distress warrants, delinquent property taxes, okay, we'll have that up here. I think that's main question. If you do have any questions about the budget, I'm gonna sneak out of town for a few days, so Daniel will be here, talk to him. Something better be on fire to call me. The last one was, last year we used capital improvements from the roads department, and we bought gravel out of ARPA, and we did the capital improvements out of the roads department budget. It looks like this year we won't have to do that. I would suggest that we continue to do the capital improvements that Harvey has listed as good things to do, but that would just come straight out of ARPA, unrestricted funds. He's got a road 18 between U and V. He's got a small bridge, and then on road 22 between T and U, there are bridges on either end of that mile that he has to replace. Now, these aren't substantial, 178,000 for one, 228 for another, and 208 for the third, so they're not anything like the bridges that we just did up on 22, or 20, I'm sorry. But I think it's a good idea to continue to fix our infrastructure up with the money that was given to us. So that's what I have this morning. Any questions of me right now? Kelly, do you have anything? With that being said, Mr. Cannon is here. For those of you that do not know him, John Cannon is Executive Director of NACO. He is the man.
Ooh, I don't know about that. Where would you like me? Which one's the hot seat?
It's whatever you want to do, John.
All right, thank you. All right, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thanks very much for having me. I apologize for my tardiness. That was my responsibility. I should have had the car figured out before I left this morning. I did not. So, like Randy said, I'm John Cannon. I'm the Executive Director of your Nebraska Association of County Officials. And that part I want to stress is that it is your association. Just a quick story that I will tell you is about a year and a half ago, I got a call from one of the assessors in Saline County, and she said, "Hey, we're having our Southeast District Assessors meeting. The place that we usually meet, it fell through. Do you know any place in short notice? The meeting's tomorrow where we'd be able to have our meeting." I said, "Well, we've got the conference room here. Randy, you'd certainly be welcome to use it." She said, "Well, how much does it cost?" I said, "Well, nothing, because it belongs to you." She said, "Well, can we bring in some donuts?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And she said, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah, the place belongs to you." And they had their meeting, and they said, "Well, can we have lunch catered in next time?" I said, "The place belongs to you. I mean, this is your building." And I'm very happy to report that they have used our facility, the large conference room at the NACO building, every month since then. And that is the point, is that our association is your association. Every brick that we own in Lincoln, that belongs to you guys. If you're meeting with a senator, if you have some sort of meeting on county business in Lincoln, you are welcome to use our facility, because again, it belongs to you. That is a facility that is there, and I'm delighted that I get to work in a nice facility. But again, it's not for me. It wasn't built for me. It was built for all of our member counties. And so I do want to stress that part. So one of the things that I tell people is our job. Our job is to provide county officials with the resources that you all need to do your jobs. And to that end, there's a number of educational sessions that we put on for a number of people. We have workshops and seminars and those sorts of things throughout the year. And I'll start by mentioning a resource that is educational in nature and is not exactly ours, but is the National Association of Counties. And I'm not being paid by them to appear, believe me. The National Association of Counties, they just had their annual conference in Austin, Texas. They'll have their next one is next year in Tampa, Florida. There's a lot of great information that they put on, stuff that you can go to, you can bring back some actionable information for your counties. They talk about things like how to spend your ARPA funds, they talk about probation, they talk about how to deal with reports, they talk about all the things that the county government has to go through. And that makes sense. They represent 3,069 counties across the country, parishes and boroughs as well. And and again, I'm not plugging for them, but I will note that when it came time to do the ARPA allocations, when we did CARES Act originally, that was money that went to the state, and the states were instructed to distribute that to the counties and the other local political subdivisions with no strings attached. And our governor, and I'm not picking on Governor Ricketts because he did the same thing that every other governor did, but our governor said, oh, we're going to attach some strings because the feds could claw this back from us. And so we're going to have a portal, and you have to go through Deloitte and Touche, and you have to do all these different things. And the National Association of Counties said that was not the intent. And that when they worked on the second round of funding, because everyone knew there was a second round of funding that was going to come along, they made sure that there was a direct allocation to county governments. And something we've never seen before, and I don't know if we're ever going to see it again in our lifetimes. So $375 billion went out across the country to all 3,069 counties and parishes and boroughs. Nebraska received a pretty significant chunk, and so I'm just going to point out, that when National NACO was working with the Trump administration, they worked with the Biden administration, they worked with both houses of Congress, both parties in Congress, they worked with the U.S. Treasury Department, and when they did that, they got that direct allocation out there, and I'm just going to point out that the $2,656,985 that York County received, if you divide that by your $450 annual dues, that would work out to 5,904 years of your annual membership. If you only use it for that. I'm not suggesting that you use your ARPA money for just that, but what I am doing is I'm illustrating that it's a great return on your investment. And again, let me repeat, they're not paying me to say that for them. With our other resources that we have, we just had our assessors workshop that we put on for the assessors. That was in Kearney. We've got our legislative conference coming up in a month. It's going to be on October 12th in West Point. If you've ever said to yourself, boy, there ought to be a law, that is the place to do it. I would encourage you to contact either me directly or your district representative in the NACO Board of Directors, and that way we can get that information and put it in front of the board and have it in a form that they can take an action on it. And I'll mention that I first thought of this idea about having commissioners have kind of their own forum because I will tell you the assessors, the clerks, the treasurers, the sheriffs, the attorneys, they're all very, very well organized. And a few years ago, I had actually a supervisor up in Holt County that said, well, John, I think we need to do something about township roads. I said, sure, Bill, I'll put you on the agenda. And so I put him on the agenda, and he got up, he said, I'd like to talk about township roads. And the board said, well, what do you want to do? He says, I don't know, I just thought we should talk about it. I thought that really wasn't very fair to Bill. And so I tried to have this a little bit more organized, so we have something that we can put in front of the board and say, here's what we want to do about township roads, or you don't have townships in York County, I know, or whatever that particular issue is. And frankly, again, the assessors, clerks, treasurers, all very, very well organized. They have their view of how county government operates. Perspective of the board is just a little bit more unique. I'm not going to say it's better or worse because your clerk's right here. She might get a little mad at me if I said that it was better. But all kidding aside, your perspective is a little bit different, and as a result of that, we should really have the input from board members and see what sorts of things you think would be good legislative fixes in our state. Because I can tell you, every year, the legislature, however many laws, however many bills they propose, roughly 1/3 of them are going to affect county government, and that has happened without fail every year since I've been at NACO. I'll get to legislation in just a second. Anyway, that's October 12th in West Point. I would love to see you all there, kind of see what the NACO board asks about, what they talk about, what sorts of statewide issues that we're contemplating and wrestling with when we go in front of the legislature. We also have our annual conference. That'll be this year in Kearney, December 13 through 15. A lot of good information, a lot of really good speakers that we've lined up for the annual conference. So I certainly hope we see you all there as well. So when I became the executive director of NACO in February of 21, I'd never been an executive director before, and I said, well, I like studying things. I'm a Gen Xer, you know, those things kind of appeal to me. And so I said, let's study what you want me to do. What things do you want NACO to do that we haven't done? What sorts of things should NACO be doing that it could be doing better? What sorts of things should we not be doing that we're currently doing? So we undertook a study. It took about 6 or 7 months. We met with certain members of the board and the MIPS board on just about a monthly basis. We talked about a number of different issues. We looked at cybersecurity, we looked at mass appraisal, GIS, citizen-centric websites. We looked at ARP allocations. We looked at grant writing. We looked at some of those things that maybe NACO could or should be doing. And we got to the end of that year, and I said, well, you hear all the things we talked about, NACO board. What would you prioritize? How would you prioritize all these? And the NACO board said yes. I said, that's not exactly prioritizing. And they said, well, I'm sure that one of our board members said, John, I'm sure that in your spare time, you and Candace can probably knock all this stuff out. And we all had a great chuckle at that. But it really highlighted the fact that there's a lot of stuff that counties do. And again, in my opinion, one of the reasons I think that working for NACO is one of the best jobs in the world is because county governments that is the government that is closest to its people. And I'm sure, if you've ever heard me speak before, you'll have heard me say this, but 4.2 million votes is how many votes county officials collectively have received in Nebraska in the last 4 years, the last 2 election cycles, which fill all of our offices. There's no other group in the state that can say that. And so, and I know the same people are voting for your assessor, voting for your clerk, or voting for your treasurer, sheriff, attorney, all that good stuff. I get that. But what it tells me, and I think what it tells anybody, is that county government is the version of government closest to its people. And I believe in that very, very strongly. So anyway, with that all said, there's a lot of stuff that counties do for their people. There's a lot of stuff that NACO should be doing and is doing for county governments. And so when we got to the end, we had that little vignette where they said, just go ahead and do everything, and we all had a good laugh. One of the things that occurred to us, though, is we said, well, if you want us to be more things to more people, well, we always have to be in Lincoln. I have to occupy that nice building that's just catty-corner from the Capitol. We cannot just be in Lincoln. If you took a line and you drew it right down the center of the state from north to south, you'd find that about 50 some odd counties are in the east part of the state of that line. About 40 some odd counties are on the west part of that line. And because that highlights the fact that our population isn't a population that's tilted toward Omaha and Lincoln. It's a population that's distributed fairly evenly throughout the state. And so we pointed that out to the board, and they said that makes a lot of sense. And so we started looking for some land. Candace and I drove out to Ogallala on a really cold February evening, and we took a tour of some facilities and some lots that they had there available, and we found a lot that was north of town, south of the lake. The board approved the purchase of that, and we actually had a groundbreaking just a few months ago, and we signed all the contracts and the bonds and all that good stuff, and we're actually going to have a building opened up next year, and that is going to be so it's able to serve all the folks in the western part of the state. I think it's a good allocation of our resources. We'll be able to serve the folks in the western part of the state, which means that the people that are in Lincoln, they'll be able to serve folks in the eastern part of the state more efficiently. One of the things I can tell you is that if I have someone that has to go do a computer install in Sioux County, that's an 8-hour drive. So they're driving out to Harrison, they're doing whatever they're doing, and then driving all the way back. That person's gone for 2 days. Whereas if I have some folks in Ogallala, that's going to make a big difference. We'll be able to project those resources more efficiently. So we're very much looking forward to that. It keeps me up at night. It's terrifying, but we'll see how that goes. So we're looking forward to that. Along with that, one of the things that we looked at is because of what MIPS does. That's the software company that you all own. Because of what MIPS does, we have a microfilming company. We have programmers. We also, apparently our board wants us to incorporate GIS somehow. We want to work with mass appraisal. These are all things they're all kind of pointing in the same direction, but they're all a little bit differently. They run a little bit differently. And so I came to the realization that we really needed someone to direct the enterprise. And so we posted for and we hired a deputy director for MIPS, someone that's just like Candace, but for the downstairs folks. He started in May. His name is Derek Niederklein. I know him from when I worked at the Department of Revenue at the state. Everyone that I've talked to that knows the guy says that was probably the best hire I could have made. And so, I think Candace is the best hire I could have made, so I'll just leave it at that. I'll let them duke it out as to which one's the better one. But, so anyway, Derek's he's done a lot as far as changing the culture, and we're really expecting some great things from him. I mentioned cybersecurity earlier. So one of the things that we did is we entered into a cooperative agreement with a couple of vendors across the state. We're not going to lay cable. We're not going to be the ones that are actually doing the network security for every county in Nebraska. And the reason that this was highlighted as an issue for us is it was 2019, and we got a visit from some folks from Homeland Security, and they said, we sent out a survey to all 93 counties in Nebraska, and in that survey, among the questions, we had two of them that said, one was, who's your IT provider? And the second one said, who provides your cybersecurity? And do you know who was indicated to be the IT provider and or the cybersecurity provider for over half of the Nebraska counties? I said, I have no idea. And they said, MIPS. I said, we don't do that. And they said, we know, that's what's so scary. And so it kind of highlights the fact that there's this expectation that MIPS does these sorts of things, but we don't do that. That's kind of very much a hardware thing that we don't do. So we talked to the vendors in the state, the main ones that we've worked with before. There's Bytes Inc. out of Scotts Bluff. There was Applied Connective out of Albion. We said, hey, look, what we want to do is we're not endorsing just you two. But what we want to do is we want to create this framework where we've got best practices, we've got some standards for practice that we're going to have available to all 93 counties, big, small, or big, medium, and small. And, kind of some uniform pricing so that, we're not having one vendor because they're close, they're gouging, all the counties in proximity to them. And so we worked through this framework. We've got this deal where between us and NERMA, we're the governmental organizations that are on the board for this cooperative. Any vendor that agrees to abide and by all these standards and these best practices, agrees to occasionally have an audit, they're allowed to be the vendor members of this cooperative. And so it's not just Bytes and Applied Connective. We've actually already had 3 other vendors that have signed on to be part of this cooperative. And so there's an implicit endorsement from NACO, from the NACO board for this cooperative, and I think it's going to be a good thing as far as protecting our counties. If you don't think cybersecurity is an issue, talk to your friends in Dawson and Platte counties. They had a ransomware attack in the last couple of years that have cost them millions of dollars. So it's a very serious issue. And again, if you don't, I'll ask you to go over to your assessor's office. He's got a lot of personal taxpayer information for people that file their depreciation worksheets. I'll ask you to go to your treasurer's office. She's got a lot of routing numbers for checking accounts and whatnot for payments that she's received. Even in the clerk's office, I think you've got some social security numbers, a number of other documents that you process that bad guys would love to get a hold of. And so cybersecurity is a very big issue, and we want you to take it seriously, and we're trying to put those resources in front of you, like I said. One of the other things that we do, as far as NACO is concerned, is we're responsible for lobbying on behalf of the 93 counties. And if any of you watched this last legislative session, God bless you. That was something else. Better than days of our lives, in my opinion. But so anyway, I mentioned earlier that roughly 1/3 of all the bills that are proposed affect county government. There are 820 bills proposed this year. Of those, 274 affect county government in one way, shape, or form. So just right at 1/3. You can almost predict these sorts of things. Of those 820 bills, 52 passed this year. Now, that's a little bit misleading because of those 52 bills that passed, there was a lot of other bills that got crammed into each of those bills. Because once it became apparent that there was a session-long filibuster going on, everyone knows how to count the hours, and they said, well, we've got a limited number of hours that we're going to be able to pass a certain number of bills. And so those bills that looked like they might go, a whole bunch of other bills got crammed into them. And the unspoken rule was anything that's controversial, do not put on these light bills. And so women and children first, right? And so everything that was somewhat non-controversial got added into those 52 bills. And so 52 got passed, but I would tell you that of those 52 that passed, they contain bits and pieces of 291 bills in all. So actually a fairly productive session. I hope we never have a session-long filibuster again. That was something else. But I was talking to John Kavanaugh, his sister is Michaela Kavanaugh, and he said, boy, you know, I hope NACO's not mad that we're holding up, you know, some of the stuff that you guys had. And I said, you know, Senator, I'll be honest with you. I don't care about the underlying issue. That is not my thing. But because of what your sister is doing, there's enough bad bills that are not going up. I think she's doing the Lord's work. He said, so does that mean that NACO endorses her? I said, no, we're staying right the heck away from that. But, you know, in the end, I think it was a fairly productive session. We got a lot of our priorities out. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, it worked out okay. I just rather we never had to go through that again, because those were a lot of long afternoons and evenings in the rotunda. So that is what it is. A few bills that I do want to mention in particular. LB 243 that had a lot to do with property tax, had some stuff to do with Turk. There was a few things that we objected to in that bill that we managed to get taken out. I'm going to ask this question. How many of you have heard of and or received the refundable income tax credit for your property tax paid for schools? Anyone? I hope everyone. So a few years ago, they passed a bill called LB 1107, and what that did was it said a percentage, they're going to set aside a whole chunk of money, and from that chunk of money, they're going to figure out what percentage of school property taxes paid are going to be reimbursed through a refundable income tax credit. So when you file your income taxes, you go to your property tax statement, you say, how much did I pay in school taxes? And you get X percent back. And last year, I think it was 30%. So I mean, a pretty significant chunk, if you ask me. That number is going to get larger as time goes on. And last year, they added community colleges into the mix. There's a thing about community colleges where that's going to be funded entirely by the state. And so so next year, 100% of your community college taxes paid are going to be part of that refundable income tax credit, plus whatever percentage for your school property taxes. So pretty good deal. I think it's something that's important. So I'm trying to make sure that it's promoted out there and people are aware of as well. In LB 243, they also had a cap on how much schools are able to levy. And ordinarily, we kind of stay away from that sort of thing. I mean, you know, what happens to the schools, that's their business. I can tell you that schools are 60% of the property tax load in the state overall, you know, and so that's certainly something when you look at property taxes, that's one of the things that you look at. But by the same token, if the legislature is going to do anything to schools to restrict their ability to raise the necessary revenues for running the schools, pretty soon someone's going to say, why is it just the schools? Why don't we do that to every political subdivision? So we always want to be cautious and look at what they're doing when it comes to schools. Because, if they sneeze, we are going to catch a cold. That's just how it works. And then again, there's that thing about the community colleges where they're going to be funded entirely by the state in the future, according to a formula. If you've got Southeast Community College, and I know you do, the way this worked is whatever their property tax levy is this year is kind of their baseline. And so the good folks at Southeast Community College said, well, if that's our baseline going into the future, we need to have that as high as possible. And so they played a little bit of game theory, which did not really quite work with political theory, but that's their business. I'm not going to criticize them, but that's one of the reasons that Southeast Community College really upped their levy. So again, I can't say I blame them. I can't say that I'm super happy about it because by the way, I pay taxes in Southeast Community College's district. So that is what it is. So another bill that was out there is LB 727. That had a few things to do with the postcard bill. We just cleaned a few things up, did a few tweaks. I know you had a question, Randy, and I'll get to that in a moment. We did some things with inheritance tax reporting, so I'm sure your treasurer is thrilled about that. We did some things with treasurer's deeds, and I'll mention briefly why we're talking about treasurer's deeds and tax sales. Ordinarily in Nebraska, how we've done it for many years is, if you don't pay your property taxes, pretty soon someone puts that up for a tax sale. An investor comes along and they buy your tax certificate. And if they pay it for 3 years, then they get to redeem it and they get your property if you don't pay your property taxes. And that's kind of a big deal because the ability to put a lien against property is one of the hallmarks of the property tax. There was a case that went up to the U.S. Supreme Court out of Minnesota. It was Tyler versus Hennepin County. And this lady said, well, hold on a sec. I didn't pay $1,000 for my property taxes, and you took my condominium, which was worth in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, I want my equity back, and makes perfect sense. I get it. And I thought, well, this is kind of one of the foundations of tax laws, the ability for the sovereign to put a levy on, or to put a lien against property. That no way the Supreme Court's gonna say this is legit. And though they 9-0, which is rare these days, they had a unanimous court said that's equity theft, and we're not going to allow governments to do that. So one of the things that, and we knew this case was going up, we had an idea as to how that was going to shake out. So we worked with the Revenue Committee. And so as part of LB 727, we really changed around the structure of how we're going to do those tax certificates for people that have not paid their property taxes. We'll see how that works out. There's still some stuff going on at the Nebraska Supreme Court after the U.S. Supreme Court remanded a few cases back to us. We'll find out how that's going to go. There's never a dull moment in this business, that's for sure. And the last thing about LB 727, which I think is probably a little bit of interest to York County, is the prohibition about having special valuation for agricultural land within city limits has gone away. And so you can have agricultural land receive special value within city limits. It's never been done before. The whole notion about special value is we don't want to price people out off their farms because of the influence of some sort of an urban center being nearby. Lincoln and Omaha are the ones that come to mind. The city of York is certainly something that goes right along with it. The theory had always been, once you've got agricultural land that's within the city limits, I mean, that is a prime candidate for development, and we don't want to provide that preferential treatment as far as special value is concerned. However, a couple of years ago, the city of Gretna said, Val's Pumpkin Patch is over there. I don't know if any of y'all ever been to Val's Pumpkin Patch. It's just a few miles down the road. The city of Gretna said, Val's is sitting right over there. What if we annexed it? Boy, that sure add to our value base. And they did. And the folks at Val's had their tax bill go from a couple $1,000s to, darn near $100,000. And they said, well, that's kind of quite an increase. And so they had good facts on their side. They lobbied for that. They got that into the bill. But what I will tell you is that this isn't going to benefit primarily agricultural land. It's going to benefit developers. I can tell you that if you look at Lancaster County and all the applications for special value this year, whether the people that applied for special value within the city limits, awful lot of developers on there. And there was one parcel of land that went from $1.5 million to $50,000 of value. That's a heck of a decrease. It's not, by my math, and I'm not good at math, it's a 97% decrease in value. So just something to be aware of. We were not huge fans of this. We testified neutral because of a number of different reasons, but that's something that could affect counties and local political subdivisions statewide. So just to be aware. A couple other bills, LB 514 was voter ID. When the voters of Nebraska passed voter ID last year and put it in the Constitution, there were a couple schools of thought as to what we're going to do. The first one was we're going to put a bill in that only does what the voters asked for. The other school of thought was we have a lot of questions about elections, let's put a whole bunch of stuff into one bill. And Senator Brewer, who's the chair of the government committee, we'd worked with him, a number of other people worked with him, and what his decision was, we're going to pass a skinny bill, and especially since there's a session-long filibuster going on, we're going to pass a bill that has just what the voters asked for. Anything else that gets in, that people want to put in, that is remotely controversial because of the fact that we've got a session-long filibuster going on, we do not want to have it in there. And what do you know, his bill got filibustered, and that was a great time in the Capitol. But that was the version of the bill that passed. And frankly, if people want to have other concerns about election security and that sort of thing, if they want to bring a separate bill, it makes perfect sense. But to pass what the voters wanted was really the priority for this last session. So we'll see how that goes. Then the last bill I wanted to mention was LB 77, and that was also from Senator Brewer, and that is permitless concealed carry across the state. That actually went into effect this last weekend, I think on Saturday. Law enforcement was a little bit divided on that. Omaha and Lincoln, so the police officers there and the sheriff's offices in Douglas and Lancaster counties, not huge fans because any traffic stop they have to treat like someone's carrying. When you're talking to the sheriffs out in, say, Sheridan County or Banner or Sioux County, when the sheriff says, we're 45 minutes away, we would prefer that people are carrying. You get two different perspectives. And so we did take a position on it at NACO, certainly something that we're interested in just because of the effect on law enforcement that it has. So anyway, there it is. But the point of all this is, I've got an ask of you guys. I don't come along and just say a whole bunch of things without asking you to do something for me. And that is, when we look at the bills that we have in our legislature, and again, 1/3 of them are going to affect county government, and more, you're going to see a lot of stuff that's going to be put on to local officials to, take care of people. It's from protection, public safety, from a public works perspective. More and more is going to be put on the backs of county government, in my opinion. Engage your senators. And so, Janet Hughes is your senator. She's been a great representative, I think. She's been very, very easy to work with. I invited her here. She had another engagement in Lincoln, so otherwise she would have been here to visit with the board. But if you've got anything that's coming up, such as the budget that you're going to talk, that you've talked about, I know, but could be talking about it again in the future, invite your senator to your board meetings, just so that she understands what sorts of things you're going through, and what the claims that you have to pay, the issues that come in front of the board, questions that arise from the public. That engagement is absolutely vital. There are a number of senators I've worked with, and I'll be honest with you, I like the vast majority of all the senators that are in the Capitol. There are a large number of them, an increasing number of them, that they do not understand how county government works. When you talk about paying a claim, when you talk about the Open Meetings Act, when you talk about the County Purchasing Act, they don't have the first clue. And so it's important that our senators understand what's going on at the local level before they start passing bills that affect us at the local level. And so invite Senator Hughes. If you know of any candidates for legislature, anyone that's thinking about running 3 years from now when Senator Hughes' hopefully first term is up, invite them. And if you're ever having someone that is running for the legislature, if you want to have a candidate for them, we'll help set that up, because we're certainly interested in forming those relationships and making sure that people understand what the county story is. So the last thing I want to mention to you is, the reason I'm here is because we work for you. I am technically your employee, and I believe that very, very strongly. And so you go on down the line of everyone that works at NACO, Candace Meredith, our deputy director, Riley Sigler is our education and community outreach coordinator, Bonkwich is our research analyst, Peggy Brass is our office clerk, Mike Bowden, Judd Allen work on our insurance pool, and Beth Farrell and Elaine Menzel are our attorneys. If you had any legal questions, I'm sure that you've talked to one of them or me before in the past. All these people are your employees. We don't exist but for 93 county governments in Nebraska. So it's our privilege, it's our pleasure to work for you all, and it's the reason that we're here. And you should expect us to come to you. It's fun to invite you to our parties in Kearney, but it's a lot more meaningful when you go to where people live. So that's why I'm here, and I'm happy to take any questions you guys have.
Before we jump into them, and I got a couple for John, we do have a Board of Equalization at 9:30, which we're within a minute. You just was getting done. So don't go away.
I won't.
How's that sound? Because then we'll go ahead and take care of that. We just have one vehicle, and then we'll jump back up.
All right.
If that's all right with you. Thanks, John.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. You want me to just stay here? Or?
You can just stay there, because unless you want to move around. So at this time, we will recess as the Board of Commissioners, and we will come into the Board of Equalization. Roll call, please.
Brooks?
Here.
Bear?
Here.
Ziegler?
Here.
Sykes?
Here.
Overmark?
Here, open meetings law is posted on the south side of our chambers, in the hallway outside of our chambers, also on our website. Proof of publication was in the York News Times August 31st, and also on our website. First off, we need to review and approve the minutes of our August 8th Board of Equalization meeting.
Move to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Brooks?
Yes.
Ziegler?
Yes.
Sykes?
Yes.
Bear?
Yes.
Overmark?
Yes, and adopt today's agenda.
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Sykes?
Yes.
Bear?
Yes.
Brooks?
Yes.
Ziegler?
Yes.
Overmark?
Yes, and you see the one thing in front of you is the application for a vehicle and exemption from York University. Once mine loads up, do you have it here? Okay, it looks like it's a 2019 Ford Transit van. And treasurer has marked for approval. Does anybody have any questions? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Move we approve the tax exempt application for the transit van for York University.
Thank you, Woody.
Second.
Thank you, Stan. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Ziegler,
Yes.
Sykes,
Yes.
Bear,
Yes.
Rhodes,
Yes.
Lamar.
Yes. That comes to the end of our Board of Equalization, so we will adjourn. We're back. We're back. John, thanks for coming out. I mean, I appreciate it. I know that whatever happened this morning, vehicle you said, things happen, right?
Yeah, appreciate it, thank you.
The legislative session coming up, that date is, I got a little bit of a problem with the date. But I think me and you had talked one time about this a little bit, and this is attorney fees for public defenders that get appointed by our judicial system that, you know, that come around. And I know that it would be somewhat of a tall task maybe to ask a legislation that is formed of a bunch of attorneys to, you know, to make rules on themselves. But, you know, we got hit this year with a, you know, a bill that was from 2 to 3 years back, you know, accumulation of it, budget buster. And I don't know if there's any ideas that, I mean, you are an attorney. To me, it's bad business practice not to get your bills out, you know, I mean, when they're due, but if there's somewhere in there that could help protect us, you know, that they can't be drugged from 2 to 3 years back, I think that would be a good one for that legislative session. I have not talked to Jana about it yet, but, you know, and it doesn't happen, I'm sure, that much, but when it does, it was devastating.
Yeah.
You know, and we had to transfer budget authority and go through those loops. But yeah, that would be one that I could think of that needs some attention.
Okay. I'll develop that a little bit more with you on.
Yeah, we can
month
talk,
of change.
we can talk again. I'll probably be at Central District. Haven't signed up for that yet, but I'll probably be around the Central District too. I'm gonna pick on you a little bit about the housing at the annual convention. You know, this is the first time that, and I don't know, did they run out of rooms before? I know that they ran out of rooms. The clerk had a special election going on at the time. We were doing budget, so we had contacted one of the other motels to say, hey, we don't, and then they said, oh, we're not doing that yet. We're taking them. So to my knowledge, we don't have any. Do you see a bunch of rooms getting opened back up? I mean, they all got, somehow they got gobbled up too fast.
And traditionally how it's always gone, and Kelly's, I'm sure, is acutely aware of how this goes.
Sure.
Is what you will have is you'll have the day that the housing opens, you'll have 93 counties that the clerks and their staff, they all start calling in all at once. And there are some counties that have 5 people in the courthouse. They'll have all 5 of them are calling at different times, and they'll say, I need 5 rooms. And so all of a sudden 25 rooms just got taken up, and it's not until later when it comes time to actually pay for them that all of a sudden 20 rooms come open again. That happens really, really frequently. There are a number of times that a lot of counties will call in and they'll know how many rooms they need, and one person gets through and says, we need 14 rooms, and only 6 people are actually going to attend. And so at the time that it comes to actually pay for these things, 8 rooms will open up. And so you guys have been very, very lucky in the past where Kelly got you through right away, and she's been able to secure you a block of rooms. Randy, I'll be honest with you, I would be very, very surprised if within the next month or so you didn't have a whole bunch of rooms that were available for you.
I think what's helped us in the past is typically we've stayed on the south side of the interstate at Holiday Inn Express, and nobody wanted to stay that disengaged, and we got right in. But, so will they be reaching out to us, or do we have to reach out to them again?
We will probably, NACO will put out something that says, hey, a whole bunch of rooms have opened up. We'll put out something, we'll make sure that you guys.
Because that was gonna happen after registration was done, right?
Right.
Which is coming up this month.
It's coming up this month.
September 8th.
Yep.
Perfect. So we won't worry about it anymore here.
Yeah.
I mean,
Kelly
we're just
will.
right on the bridge. You know, whether we drive back and forth or whether we stay, obviously, it's a lot nicer to stay.
It's a lot more fun.
Especially. And then location, for those of you that don't know, our office that John occupies is off the southwest corner, sorry, I was backwards there, of the state capitol grounds, just right off there. I mean, it's real easy to find, and I would say that even if you don't have a meeting, stop in and see them.
Yeah.
It's a good way to get to know them. We'll see the faces. The last thing that I have is, and we went through this, this year, we snuck in, sometimes, I'm a promoter of budget authority. But sometimes when somebody promotes it a lot, maybe I get tuned out. Give me your explanation of what you take budget authority being. We have the opportunity to do 2.5% and an additional 1% of budget authority. I know that the state treasurer's, state auditor's office says that do it. Do you give a good argument for or against it?
I'll be fairly agnostic, and I'll refer to, I like to refer to game theory a lot. So, you've got 2.5% of built-in budget authority that you can go up without sending something to a vote of the people, and then you can go up an extra percent. You've got a majority of the board that votes in favor, two-thirds of the vote of the board that votes for it. You don't have to use it. So, but I guess the way that I look at it is almost like Southeast Community College, and so here's where the political component comes in, right? But if you look at establishing your baseline for future years, if you go up 2.5%, that's your baseline for next year. You're not going above that, right? If you go up 3.5%, you don't have to take the full 3.5%, but you've established your authority. So that's going to compound every year thereafter. And so, the question is, from the standpoint of having the flexibility, certainly it's very, very helpful to go to 3.5% each and every year. Politically speaking, that is something I'm very, very agnostic about. And so, the question remains, do you go up to 3.5%, but just basically stay at 2.5% and remain the stewards of the taxpayers' money, because ultimately you're answerable to the citizens. I don't see a problem with going up to 3.5% and making sure that you have that authority in case something wonky happens. Wonky being a technical term, but if you've got flood, you've got blizzard, you've got a road that gets washed out. If you've got something that the legislature does where they're going to push something down on the county government, it sure is nice to have that authority to be able to go up when you need to. In the fat years, you don't have to use it. So that would kind of probably be my view on it. But again, whether or not you actually do that that's a political decision for the board to make.
And we're fortunate here, we have interlocal agreements that turn into lit exemptions, and they work very well for York County.
Yeah.
The big one being our call center, and then an ambulance service that helps us out too.
Right.
So.
And one thing I will add to that, I mean, just speaking purely from the math perspective, so cities and counties, we have a 50-cent lit, as you know. Ours is constitutional, right? They wrote into the Constitution, counties will not go above 50 cents, which ties their hands a little bit. And then statutorily, we can only go to 45, and we only get that extra 5 cents if we have an interlocal, kind of like you were describing. I can tell you that I visit with Lynn Rex, who's the executive director for the League of Municipalities, all the time. And they've got a number of cities and villages across the state. Over half of their cities and villages are at 50 cents. And even when valuations go up, even if they wanted to, they won't go more than, they can't get to 2.5% because they just can't get there. And so they're almost always going to stay at 50 cents. And that's with interlocal agreements and all that good stuff. Everything they've done to try and cut costs back as best they can. And that's kind of a fix that was actually put on them. They used to have $1.05 was their authority, just like the schools. And then several years ago, the state said, no, we're going to ratchet back your levy authority. Oh, by the way, we're going to give you a whole bunch of state aid. Guess which one went away first? So that was one of those issues that they got ratcheted down in a hurry, and they had no room to expand. Now, counties are a little bit different. I mean, you're talking about county government, you got the whole county, right? The city only has just that valuation base that's within the city limits. County's a little bit different because you've got the valuation base of the entire county. So that's a little bit easier for people to absorb that. I mean, there's a reason you guys are, I think at 23 cents on your levy, something like that. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason that counties are typically in you see most of them are in the 20s. We're nowhere near the 50s. Oh, by the way, however, talk to our friends in Dual County, which is a very, very small county with a very, very small valuation base. Not a lot of people coming in and going out, not a lot of commercial activity. They're darn near 50 cents. And anything happens, they're not gonna be able to go above it. They're just stuck. And so, to the extent that Dual County has the ability, they take advantage of it every single time because the math is not gonna work out in their favor otherwise.
Yeah, our evaluations are we're blessed, you know, with the valuation increase this year, every one of those 23 pennies gained about $22,000 worth of value, you know, so that helps to keep it at where it's at. Do you have any idea across the state? Last year, we did not participate in the postcard bill. 2 of our schools did. Now this year they're out and we're in. Do you have any idea across the state? Have you heard, is there a lot of counties that do participate in it, or do you get much feedback on that?
We do. So last year there were, and then there's 2 ways of looking at this. Last year, I think it was 80 some odd counties sent out postcards, okay? And they were sending out postcards because of community colleges. But the county hearing is only where it's headquartered, right? Or where the political subdivision is headquartered. And so last year, only 30 counties actually had the hearings. 80 counties produced postcards, only 30 counties actually had hearings. So, that primarily was driven by the community colleges. Last year, I know that Southeast had to have a hearing, Northeast Community College had to have a hearing, and I believe it was Mid-Plains had to have a hearing. And so that's, and Metro had to have a hearing as well. So that's a huge chunk of the state right there. As far as counties are concerned about having to be in or out, I think last year's probably 20 counties were on the postcard and had to attend the hearing. So that's probably a good baseline. This year, I'm not sure. My suspicion is that there were a number of counties last year that they said, if we just cut $5,000 out of the budget, we don't have to be on the postcard. Oh, by the way, that catches up in a hurry, because if you're doing that as like a deferred maintenance or something like that, well, now you do have to pay for it, and you have to pay for whatever else has been deferred. And so my guess is probably a few more than just 20 some odd counties will be on the postcard this year, but we haven't heard yet.
Okay.
I think everything was due into the assessor Friday of last week, so I'm sure we're going to start hearing about who's in, who's out here in the next few days.
And we do appreciate I know that I had emails from Beth, kind of the cheat sheets of how to do it just right.
Right.
And it's exactly what it is. Guys, do you have any other questions of John while he's sitting here in front of us? We get to see him, but we don't get to see him in our house very often, so fire away if you got any.
I will mention, Randy, by the way, I've told the staff, whether it's me or it's Candace or it's Beth or Elaine, and maybe Luke next year, I'm not sure, you can expect that someone from NIC is going to come to one of your meetings at least once every year. And, if there's a need, 2 or 3 times as well. But you can expect us, we should be coming to you. That's kind of our job. So anyway, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No problem. Anybody else have anything?
You touched on a number of questions that I was tossing around. I think this budget has been an interesting one for us. Budget season's always interesting, but this one has seemed to be one that has been a little bit more challenging, maybe. Is there any, I don't know what I'm looking for in asking this question, but is there any thing that you saw, best practices in counties that getting everybody on the same page and getting from getting budgets turned in, and any best practices in encouraging the elected officials and the board, getting everybody on the same page? And
Sure. I guess probably one of the ones that stands out is when you have, the elected officials, including the board, all the row offices, get together before you start having budget hearings and say, what are we going for? What is, usually you'll have an idea from your assessor what preliminary evaluations look like. Mm-hmm. And that certainly is helpful as far as knowing, okay, well, what does this mean as far as the levy's concerned? But one of the things that you know, and actually it's in statute, and may be helpful is, and I don't like the term zero-based budgeting. For whatever reason, I just think that's just kind of ludicrous, and that was a buzzword in the 90s and the aughts, and there's a reason that it went away. But statutorily, what we have is, you know, you're supposed to figure out what a zero property tax request increase budget would look like. And then if you have to go over, you just have, you know, majority of the vote of the board and off you go. And every county does that, right? But it is worthwhile when you get together with all the elected officials, all of you, when you start kind of, and it's not even a budget hearing, but it would really be more almost like a workshop. Just say, you know what, this is what it looks like if we remain flat. Oh, by the way, we know for a fact that roads, their costs are going up. We know for a fact that the cost of living is going up for everybody that's an employee of the county. I mean, so it's a good thing to, when you workshop these sorts of things, to say, here's a starting point. You know, what can you live with? What do you have to have? I think that having everyone together in the same room and saying, here's what it looks like if we do nothing, if we don't increase the property tax request, here's what it looks like, you know, if we, you know, take into account the cost of gravel is, hot mix asphalt, cost of living, etc. I think it's worthwhile to have that conversation just as a starting point and see what everyone does.
Yep. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
You can re-ask my questions if you want.
I think he answered them.
All right. I'm going to leave my my business cards here. Feel free to give me a call at any time. You know, I've taken calls at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night before, and it's cool because my wife takes calls at 11 o'clock on Saturday night. So we've got the whole thing worked out. You know, and again, this goes to the fact that I work for you. And so if you have a question about anything that's going on, please feel free to give me a call. We had the 911 outage over the weekend, and so even though I was off in Colorado, I was taking phone calls on that because that's just part of the job. So my pleasure, and I really appreciate the time.
Are you taking off? Are you gonna hang around a little bit?
I'll probably go visit a couple offices.
I was gonna say, hang around a little bit. I'll visit with you a little bit too. Anything else for John Moyes here? Thank you, John.
Yep, thanks very much.
Okay, and we are at the end of our meeting unless somebody has something else that they would like to talk about, they thought about, committee report or anything like that.
Just an FYI, this evening at 7 o'clock at the Cornerstone Building, Matt Ennis is gonna be talking, Epic Auction. Some more information for that project, that petition drive that's out there.
Okay.
And it will impact us if it goes or doesn't go.
Anybody else? We are adjourned.